None of us can avoid white supremacy. Many people have just learned the ways in which white supremacy permeates every facet of our society and how we make choices on who leads, who follows, who is immune to the law and has impunity from any regulation that is put forth, and who has to pay the highest cost for the most minor infraction. We've seen all of these dramatic ways in which white supremacy has prevailed against the lives of mostly Black, brown, and indigenous people. But the one way we have not spoke of how white supremacy abuses us all is within our very system of corporate America. Corporate America is wrought with white supremacy, and it is the most insidious way it oppresses everybody. It has been the most mentally, emotionally, and professionally draining experience of my life. Exhausted me, burdened me, wore me down. I wish I would have picked up on is when the Black people start leaving an organization, you need to start leaving too. A lot of times we think that the old culture of an organization doesn't matter to us. And I went into several organizations. If I wasn't the only Black person there would only be a few others. And a lot of times they would leave and I wouldn't pay attention and I wouldn't follow suit. And even when they were kind enough to share with me what had transpired before I arrived at that organization, I would take it with a grain of salt. Like, oh, I can handle it. I can manage it. It doesn't sound that bad. But if people are leaving the security of an income, you need to know it is that bad. When the Black people leave, regardless of the level or the hierarchy, when all of those people start leaving, you need to run. If you are going into an organization and you are the only person of color or the only Black person, and you want to maintain the value of your cultural identity, you need to take a second look before you join these organizations. Because even if they don't objectify you literally and treat you with blatant racism and microaggressions, you are a face for them to check off their list of anti-racism or I'm not racist, because proximity to Blackness allows a lot of these corporations to get away with being inclusive and having a diverse constituency when they really don't. Because a lot of times they hire these inclusivity and diversity managers who, if they are a brown face, make six figures and have no idea what the constituency of most of the brown people that work for their organization, what their needs are. They don't represent the people that they're supposed to be representing. They go to these diversity trainings, they take these implicit bias classes, and they think they know everything there is to know about people of color, and namely Black people, and they use it to aggress microaggressions on us in the lunchroom. You can't check off a list of this isn't racist, I didn't do this racist thing, I didn't do this racist thing in order to qualify yourself as anti-racist. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable and unlearn the ways in which you, as a white person, perpetuate white supremacy. Because we're all victims to it, even white people. And it does not imply, I am not here by any means to imply that you can be absolved from white supremacy just because you're a victim of it and you happen to be white. What I'm saying is, you have to stop playing by white supremacy's rules in order to be anti-racist. So you have to stop perpetuating the ways in which white supremacy continues to subjugate other Black, brown, and indigenous people. What I also should have paid attention to, when people tell you the tea on the company's leader or the company's son or just somebody in the organization who's been allowed to be racist, ignorant, or just all out rude, and they're still there when you get there, when they tell you the tea, believe that where there's smoke, there's fire. Maybe it happened 6 months ago or 5 years ago, but a company that allows that type of behavior means that there are other ways in which they permit poor behavior for their friends and in the practice of nepotism, and don't allow it for people they don't know, which is typically brown people, Black people, and indigenous people. You need to pay attention to all of the rumors an organization has, especially once you get there and you hear it from the horse's mouth, meaning the people that work from the organization. There was one thing that I did a couple years ago when I took a job with a psychologist's office. I was told by the only other Black person there, who happened to be a Black woman, and the only other minority other than the Black woman there, which was an Asian woman, that the director was not only racist in practice, but he also was very manipulative and had other ways in which he was very unprofessional. And I thought that he obviously would have learned from his errors because a group of people quit the company at one time, and that I would be able to notice and protect myself. But I wasn't, because I experienced other forms of manipulation, because white supremacy doesn't just bleed out in one big cleansing. It leaves slowly, and it bleeds slowly like a poison, because people will try to continue to use all of the swords of white supremacy in different forms. And that director used other tools of manipulation to aggress on me. And I experienced his passive racism in many other ways. I should have listened to those women in a way that was about honoring that just because I think I can manage something doesn't mean I should. That is a problem a lot of us brown, black, and indigenous people have, is that we think we're supposed to endure because we come from generations of parents who are happy to just be able to get a job, who are happy to just be able to work in a place and not be told, oh, you're fired because you're black and we don't like you. And those overt forms of racism that were anti-blackness that was clear. My mother wants me to be happy every time I get a job, regardless of my negative experience, regardless of how I'm treated or talked to, or how my work ethic isn't honored, or how my creativity isn't honored. Gone are those days. Millennials don't go for it because there's too many options. You cannot convince us that we have to remain enslaved within the thralls of white supremacy in order for us to survive. We know how to make it outside of white supremacy because we've had to, because white supremacy has continued to exclude us based on how well we don't deculture ourselves and how well we don't wash ourselves of our personal and cultural identities, because we've begun to love our hair again and our food and the way we dress and the way we talk. And we realize that being black and speaking in the African American vernacular is not ghetto. Because you have no idea how many times people like to call African American vernacular ghetto, but it's not, because in the American language, we use so many different colloquialisms from other cultures and other languages. But when it comes to African American dialect, we like to say that that's ghetto. It's not ghetto. You just don't understand it. And it's another form of anti-blackness. A lot of us have gone through these workplaces deculturing ourselves and code switching. We've made code switching popular and easy and even admirable and as a point of black excellence because it's necessary for us to succeed in these environments. But what has happened is that we've code switched so much that we don't realize that the idea of code switching to improve ourselves has become conflated with the idea that we need to continue to tap dance for them in order to be seen as possible or plausible as successful and hardworking and intelligent. That's not what we need to do. We cannot continue to give ourselves to these organizations as they ask us to remove our entire cultural identities for the sake of prioritizing their comfort and internalizing their fear of us. Because when they go to these inclusivity meetings and these implicit bias trainings, they can check off the list and say, I don't say nigger and I don't touch her hair. And whatever new way they've come up with that black people experience racism in the workplace, they're gonna continue creating this long list until they realize maybe 5 years from now that, oh, it's the entire system. We need to create a new environment. It's not just in what we say, but it's how we design the workplace. It's the rules that we create. It's the dress code that we've made. It's the language barriers that we have. What happens when we start to code switch? We prioritize their comfort. We internalize their fears and remove the distinct identity we have that makes them uncomfortable. They begin to exploit that. It's so natural for them to exploit that. For centuries, they've been conditioned to us performing for them to make them safe, to make them comfortable with our presence so that we don't instill fear in them. I know 6'5" black men that speak in soft tones that aren't natural to them because they don't want to be intimidating, not only to white people, but to the regular world around them, because the regular world has impressed upon them some implicit bias that tall black men are threatening. Don't let you have nappy hair. Don't let you not be dressed in khakis and an ugly ass polo shirt. I'm so sick of that dress code. But black people, we throw flavor and stank on that shit too and make it fly. When we prioritize their comfort and internalize their fear, they get to exist within the comfort of being able to exploit us, because we are pursuing excellence in blackface. If we have to speak differently, think differently, consciously be aware of how we're talking, what we're wearing, how we respond, because things that are culturally identifiable to us and how we interact in the world is taken offensively by white supremacy, and they get offended easily. And we still move through the world pursuing success at high levels and have attained the same levels of success as our white supremacist counterparts, but we do it having to be conscious of what we're wearing all the time and how we're talking. Do you know the level of stress that impresses upon all of us? I didn't realize what that was doing to me, constantly having to make sure that I was enunciating and pronouncing my words correctly in environments that it wasn't even necessary, because these people didn't even know how to use the Queen's English properly. But I'm stretching myself to sound more educated, to sound articulate. We have to stop doing that. When we perform for the white gaze, we're absolving them from the responsibility of removing the pressure to perform for them. And it's not just about what we wear and how we talk and the food we eat and what we did over the weekend that we're hiding. It's also us trying to outlive the narrative of lazy and bored and uninventive. Do you know how many Black people and people of color, I know y'all identify with this, we pursue excellence so aggressively that we never want to appear bored. We never want to appear tired. We don't take vacations. We stay over till 8, even though we're not getting overtime, not even because we're hourly, but we're trying to seem like we are a team player for a team that's never been about supporting us. And what ends up happening is we pursue excellence so aggressively that we exhaust ourselves, completely tire ourselves out. And again, they're conditioned to us performing so much for them that they don't even honor and say to us, you don't have to work that hard. And it's not to say that there aren't white counterparts who have this same work ethic to stay over, to do the extra work. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when Black people, people of color, and Indigenous people do it, we are not honored for it. We are not paid well for it more often. It's not to say that these are zero-sum situations and that there aren't organizations that prioritize honoring people regardless of racial or ethnic background. It's just that most often, and in my experience working in small businesses and nonprofits, this has been what has gone on, because only the bigger organizations are made accountable. These small organizations, they don't have accountability teams for their racial interactions and their diversity. They get to go along in the world being exactly who they are. Google has to be accountable because everybody gives Google money. But when you're a small nonprofit in the middle of Farmington Hills, Michigan, and your constituency and your membership and your clients are white, you're serving your clients. And your clients live with white supremacy. So you're also going to serve white supremacy. So you have no system of accountability for how you treat people of color. And that's how it has been in the places that I've worked. So when I've been overworking and outperforming, they're thankful for it, but they're not giving me a significant raise. They're not honoring me in the organization's meetings or in the organization's publications. They're treating it like it's normal and then gaslight me when I demand more pay or I demand a title change or some type of recognition for the work that I'm doing. It's designed by white supremacy, the fact that any of us, regardless of our race or ethnic background, need to prove ourselves to the point of tiring ourselves working 60 hours a week with no additional pay. I had to take accountability for how I was conditioned to be exploited, how my eagerness to prove myself, and to always be doing the most when only the regular amount was required. Thank you, Yarmira, for bringing that point up.
But I do think that white supremacy is the ultimate enemy, and it will have you second guessing yourself. And it will have you like doing the most when you need to do just the regular amount, especially when the regular amount hasn't a part in it, you know?
Because our counterparts can do the regular amount, and they're gonna be honored for it. This topic is something I could go on for ad nauseum without exhausting all of the ways in which, especially in corporate America, we all experience the ills of white supremacy. So in the first part, I focused on, the things you should pay attention to and the signs you should look out for if you're working in a corporate environment where white supremacy prevails, which is most of our work environments. And in part two, I focused on the personal stories of how I experienced white supremacy, the exploitation, the gaslighting, and then the blatant racism. And in part three, what I'll focus on is specifically that introvert or conservative personality that Black people tend to have in corporate work environments, but because we're trying to preserve our positions and we're trying to preserve our mental health and emotional health and social health, and we don't share that component of our personalities. But I want to talk about how that introversion is weaponized against us and used as ways to critique us in performance reviews, saying we're not a part of the team and things like that. And there was a tweet thread that I got tied into about a week ago that brought up some really key points on how being a conservative as a Black woman specifically, or a Black person in general, is weaponized. Socialization is a commodity that they need to exploit. So they want to take up your lunch break. They want to exploit all of your after work time and go out for drinks. And if you don't want to participate, you're seen as not being a team player for not giving up your personal time. So that's what part three will focus on. Thank you all for watching and being a part of this discourse. I do encourage you to share your experiences and stories down below, because I would like to make a fourth part of the video where I talk about how I've experienced some of those things that you all have and ways in which we can learn to move around them and build our own organizations and build ourselves up so we can have better experiences in corporate.
Hey, if this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. I'm Tyra High. You can find me on most social media platforms at Tyra High. I hang out on Instagram the most though. I also have a podcast called Stories for Healing. It's on the anchor.fm platform, but you can find my podcast anywhere podcasts are published, from Apple to Google to Spotify to Overcast. You can find me pretty much anywhere. And those focus on stories about my life that aim towards healing, on how to fix your attachment styles and your emotional issues and things like that. So I just go over some of my dating experiences. It's a little risque. I'm a bit vulgar on there. So if you visit there, just be prepared. It's adult material and I talk about a lot of sex. Anyway, thank you for coming to my channel. Please comment. That is what's really important to me. I want to get to know who I'm talking to, but I would love it if you would share it with people you know, and definitely subscribe if you like the material. I have more to come, and there'll be 2 more parts to this. All right. Bye.